They called it the most hated building in New York. A 1,396-foot spike of concrete and glass thrust above the skyline, sold as paradise for billionaires, but despised by the city it towers over. 432 Park Avenue shattered records for height and price. Yet its real legacy is darker. Secret political deals, lost public input, and a symbol of how unchecked wealth can block the sun, erase a neighborhood, and silence a community. How did a tower designed for the elite come to represent everything broken about modern New York? The answer begins with the loophole that changed the city forever. Before a single column rose above Park Avenue, the groundwork for 432's impossible height was done in lawyers' offices, not on construction sites. 5 separate parcels, each with their own air rights, were quietly stitched together by 2008. Transfer deeds moved more than 116,000 square feet of unused development rights onto the former Drake Hotel lot. The base zoning allowed a floor area ratio, FR, of 15.0, but with each new deed, the number crept higher. By the time the last signature dried, the site had a legal FR of nearly 19, an unheard-of multiplier for Midtown. The final zoning lot covered about 44,000 square feet, but the merged development rights permitted over 411,000 square feet of luxury condos stacked into the sky. Each deal was filed with the city, but the real action happened in closed meetings, where real estate lawyers and planning consultants mapped out every loophole. No campaign money changed hands. No criminal charges were ever filed. Instead, the city's own zoning code, written decades earlier, was turned inside out. The process was legal, but opaque. Public records confirmed the transfers, but not the backroom strategy that made them possible. The advantage was locked in before the first shovel hit the ground. A sliver of Manhattan, now able to support a tower taller than the Empire State Spire. For the developers, it was a masterstroke of paperwork. For everyone else, it was the moment the rules stopped protecting the skyline and started serving those who could afford to buy the AIR itself. No notice went out to neighbors when the plans for 432 Park landed at City Hall. No flyers, no invitations, not even a slot on the Community Board 5 agenda. The project sidestepped the city's uniform land use review procedure entirely. Under as-of-right zoning, developers needed no public hearing, no environmental review, no vote. 30 signatures on a petition, residents and small businesses pleading for a chance to speak, sat ignored in a file. Not one made it to a microphone. During those months, activists like Linda Klein called and emailed, asking for a spot on the calendar. The answer was always the same: nothing to review, nothing to discuss. One CB5 member, quoted in the record, called the silence a civic blackout. The City Planning Commission's calendar from 2012 to 2013 lists dozens of towers and conversions. 432 Park never appears. There was no environmental impact statement, no study of lost sunlight, no chance to raise a hand and object. Developers filed their paperwork, paid their fees, and watched the clock. The law protected their right to build, but it also shielded them from public scrutiny. For the people who lived and worked in the shadow of the old Drake Hotel, the process felt like erasure. The city's own rules, written to balance power, had become a wall. The building that would soon dominate the skyline arrived without a single word from the street below. Raphael Vignoli's design called for a skyscraper that would do what no other residential building in New York had ever tried. From the sidewalk, the tower's 93-foot width looks impossibly narrow for its 1,396-foot height, a 15-to-1 ratio that pushes the limits of engineering. The structure relies on a concrete core, poured in stages and reinforced with steel, forming a rigid tube that acts like the spine of a giant. Every 12th floor, mechanical levels break up the shaft, bracing the building against the wind and housing the machinery that keeps the tower running. The grid of 12-foot square windows, set in a strict mathematical pattern, wraps the facade in a logic that is both elegant and severe. Each pane is a perfect square, repeating up the shaft with relentless precision. On stormy days, the top floors can sway more than 3 feet side to side. Engineers installed tuned mass dampers, giant weights hidden above the penthouse, to absorb the movement. But even with these, residents can sometimes feel the building flexing in the wind. Silvano Hajar, the project's structural engineer, described the challenge as balancing on a pencil. Billions of dollars and years of research produced a building that redefined what was physically possible for a residential tower. But as the concrete dried and the last window was set, the question lingered. Who was all this genius really for? At the top of 432 Park Avenue, a penthouse sold for $95 million in 2016. The buyer's name never appeared on the buzzer. Most of the tower's 104 apartments sit empty for months at a time. Less than half are occupied on any given day, even in peak season. The lights stay off. The hallways are silent. This is not a home, but a safe deposit box in the sky, its keys held by billionaires who may never set foot inside. Down on the street, the building's shadow stretches 4 hours across Central Park every winter afternoon. Playgrounds and ball fields fall dark, while the southern lawns lose their last rays of sun. Parkgoers call it the middle finger, a concrete insult aimed at everyone who can't afford to buy a view. The Municipal Art Society's shadow studies show the tower's thin silhouette marching across the park, blocking light from the carousel, the zoo, the busiest walking paths. For the families, dog walkers, and sunbathers below, the cost is paid in hours of lost sunlight, traded for a skyline trophy that stands mostly empty. New York's skyline once meant possibility for millions. Now, a single building stands as a monument to vacancy and exclusion, a grid of perfect squares, each one a locked vault, casting darkness on the city's most beloved public space. In 2007, demolition crews arrived at the Drake Hotel, a fixture on Park Avenue for more than 80 years. The marble lobby, once crowded with bellhops and travelers, emptied out in a matter of weeks. More than 200 workers, housekeepers, porters, cooks, lost their jobs with a single notice. There was no ceremony, no farewell for the guests who had called the Drake home for decades. The last bellhop, interviewed by a local paper, described packing up lost luggage in silence, watching the chandeliers come down one by one. Permits filed with the city listed only the square footage to be cleared. No mention of the wedding parties, the jazz nights, the regulars who tipped in folded 20s. Neighbors filed suit. Preservationists pleaded for a reprieve. But the hotel lacked landmark status, and the sale was final. By summer, the site was a fenced-off pit, the old neon sign tossed in a dumpster. What replaced the Drake was not another gathering place, but a locked-glass tower, built for strangers who would never meet. In 2019, the anger that had simmered for years finally reached City Hall. Activists who had been shut out of the process banded together with neighborhood groups and urban planners. They filled council chambers, waving photos of empty towers and playgrounds lost in shadow. For the first time, city officials listened. The city council passed a zoning amendment that same year, closing the loophole that let developers stack mechanical floors to boost height without adding real apartments. The new rule capped mechanical voids, making it harder to game the system. In 2020, a vacancy surcharge hit luxury condos left empty, targeting the vertical ghost towns that dotted Billionaires Row. The reforms didn't bring back the Drake or restore lost sunlight, but they proved that the rules could change. Linda Klein, once ignored by the board, stood with council members as the vote passed. The city's door, once locked, was finally forced open. At 1,396 feet, 432 Park Avenue stands as the tallest residential tower in New York, made possible by 5 air rights transfers and 0 public hearings. Its shadow darkened Central Park for over 4 hours each winter day, while more than half of its 104 condos sit vacant most of the year. The demolition of the Drake Hotel in 2007 erased nearly a century of neighborhood history, displacing over 200 workers. Although city officials enacted zoning reforms in 2019 to limit similar towers, many documents related to early approvals and campaign contributions remain sealed. The building's engineering is undeniable, but so are its social costs. Today, 432 Park Avenue is a case study in how unchecked development can reshape a city's skyline and its soul. Its legacy is not just in concrete and glass, but in the debates it ignited about who New York is really for.